The planet, Seven, hung in the blackness of space like a dead brown eye. No clouds moved across its surface. No oceans reflected the light of its distant sun. The world had been empty for 12,000 years, and the galaxy preferred it that way. Captain Laura stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and watched the planet grow larger on the main screen. She was a tall woman with gray streaks in her dark hair, and the kind of calm face that made people trust her in dangerous situations. Right now, she needed that calm because her liaison was making noises that sounded very much like panic. Ambassador stood beside her, his four arms folded tightly against his thin blue chest. They were an old species. They had traveled between stars when humans were still learning to make fire. They looked down on humanity the way adults look down on children playing with sharp objects. "You cannot land on this world," said. His translator made his voice sound flat, but Laura could see the fear in his large yellow eyes. "It is forbidden. My government has declared this entire system off limits for 10,000 years. "And yet you won't tell us why," Laura said. She kept her voice friendly. Humans were new to the galactic community and they could not afford to make enemies, but they also could not afford to show weakness. "We found coordinates to this place in archives on our own moon. Someone visited Earth a very long time ago and left a map. We have a right to know why." Made a sound that might have been a sigh. "Some knowledge is too dangerous. Your species is young. You do not understand what sleeps in the dark corners of this galaxy." Laura turned to look at him directly. "Then help us understand." The ambassador said nothing. He simply stared at the dead planet on the screen, and Laura saw something in his eyes that she had never seen in a before. It was terror, pure and simple. Whatever was down there frightened a species that had seen the rise and fall of 100 civilizations. That should have made her turn the ship around. Instead, it made her more determined to find answers. Dr. Price was waiting in the shuttle bay when Laura arrived. He was a short man with messy brown hair and the kind of energy that made him seem younger than his 50 years. Had spent his whole life studying dead civilizations, and the chance to explore a planet that had been sealed away made him almost shake with excitement. "The scans show a structure built into the northern mountain range," he said, holding up a tablet covered in data. "It's massive, maybe a temple or a government building. The architecture doesn't match anything in our databases." Lieutenant Danny Cole stood nearby, checking his weapon for the third time. He was the ship's security chief, a broad man with a shaved head and careful eyes. Danny never got excited about discoveries. He got excited about keeping his people alive. "I don't like this," Danny said. "They have been in space for 50,000 years. If they say a place is dangerous, we should probably listen." "They also said humans would never amount to anything," Laura replied. "They said we should stay in our own solar system and stop bothering our betters. I'm getting tired of being told what we can't do." The shuttle dropped through the thin atmosphere of Seven and landed on a rocky plain near the mountain. The air outside was breathable but thin, and the sky had a strange orange color that made everything look like it was burning. Laura led her team toward the structure had identified, their boots crunching on ground that had not felt footsteps in thousands of years. The temple was even larger than the scans had suggested. It rose from the mountainside like a great stone mouth, carved with symbols that seemed to shift when Laura tried to focus on them. The entrance was tall enough for a creature 3 times human size, and the darkness inside felt thick and heavy. Moved ahead, his lights cutting through the shadows. "This is incredible," he whispered. "The construction techniques are beyond anything I've seen. These walls are seamless. It's like the whole building was grown rather than built." They walked deeper into the temple, their footsteps echoing off walls covered in strange carvings. The images showed tall figures with multiple arms, standing over smaller creatures that seemed to be bowing or perhaps screaming. Laura could not tell which. And then they found the statue. It stood in the center of a vast circular chamber, 30 meters tall and carved from stone so black it seemed to drink the light. The figure had 6 arms, each hand holding a different object: a sword, a flame, a book, a chain, a key, and something that looked like a human skull. But it was the face that made Laura stop breathing. The statue's face was almost human, with 2 eyes and a mouth and the suggestion of expression. One eye socket held a brilliant red gem that caught their lights and threw back colors that should not have existed. The other socket was empty, just a dark hole where something precious had once been. Approached the base of the statue and ran his scanner over the ancient text carved there. "This language is old," he said, "very old, but I'm getting a partial translation." He was quiet for a long moment, reading the words on his screen. When he looked up, his face had gone pale. "What does it say?" Laura asked. "It talks about something called the binding. It says the statue is not a monument, it's a lock," swallowed hard. "And the gems are the keys. One gem was removed during a great war 10,000 years ago. The text says the second gem must never be taken. It says if both gems are removed, the sleeper will wake and the galaxy will remember fear." Danny raised his weapon, pointing it at the darkness around them. "We need to leave, right now." Before Laura could respond, her communicator crackled with static. Ensign Maria Santos, their communications officer aboard the Horizon's Edge, sounded worried. "Captain, we have a problem. A patrol ship just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Commander is demanding that we leave immediately. He's threatening to open fire if we don't withdraw." Laura looked at the statue, at the single red gem glowing in its eye. She thought about Sphere and the warnings carved into these ancient walls. Every instinct told her to run. But then called out from across the chamber. He was kneeling near a side passage, shining his light on the dusty floor. "Captain," he said, his voice strange, "someone else has been here recently. These scratches are fresh, and they lead toward the statue." Laura felt cold spread through her chest. They were not alone, and whoever else was in this temple had come here for a reason. She looked up at the statue's face, at the single gem still shining in its eye, and she knew with terrible certainty that something very bad was about to happen. The patrol ship hung in orbit like an angry wasp, its weapons pointed at the horizon's edge. Commander appeared on the communication screen with his 4 arms crossed and his yellow eyes burning with fury. Unlike Ambassador, showed no fear, only cold, ancient hatred. "You have violated sacred space," said through the translator. "Your species has been part of the galactic community for less than 50 years, and already you ignore our laws. Leave now or we will destroy your vessel." Captain Laura stood her ground on the bridge. She had dealt with arrogance before. They saw humans as children, too young and too foolish to understand the dangers of the universe. Maybe they were right, but Laura had not come this far by backing down from threats. "We found evidence that someone else has entered the temple recently," she said. "If there are intruders on a world you claim is forbidden, don't you want to know who they are?" His eyes narrowed. For a moment, something like concern crossed his alien face. "Impossible. No ship has entered this system in centuries. Our sensors would have detected any approach." "Then your sensors missed something. We found fresh marks on the temple floor. Someone is down there right now." The commander was silent for a long moment. Laura could see him thinking, calculating risks and possibilities. Finally, he spoke again, his voice slightly less hostile. "You have 6 hours to complete your survey and identify these intruders. Then you will leave and never return. If you attempt to take anything from the temple, we will destroy you. This is not a negotiation." The communication ended, and Laura allowed herself a small breath of relief. 6 hours was not much time, but it was enough. She contacted her team on the surface and told them to continue the investigation. Dr. Price had spent those hours translating more of the ancient text carved into the temple walls. When Laura returned to the chamber of the statue, He was waiting with a look on his face that mixed wonder and fear in equal parts. "I've figured out what this place is," said. He gestured at the towering figure above them, the black stone giant with 6 arms and 1 glowing eye. "The statue depicts something called the Warden, but it's not what we thought. The Warden isn't a guardian of this place. The statue itself is a prison." Laura looked up at the massive figure. In the dim light of their equipment, the carved face almost seemed to be watching them. A prison for what? "Something called the Sleeper. The text describes it as a consciousness without physical form. It fed on minds the way we feed on food. 12,000 years ago, it consumed 3 entire civilizations before a coalition of species managed to trap it." Pointed at the gem still glowing in the statue's eye socket. "The gems are seals. They contain the minds of everyone the Sleeper ever consumed. As long as both gems remained in place, the prison held. But one gem was removed during a war 10,000 years ago." "And the prison weakened," Laura said. "Yes, the text says the remaining gem is all that keeps the Sleeper contained. If it's removed, the entity will be free." Danny Cole had been scanning the passages that led deeper into the temple. Now he returned with his weapon drawn and his jaw tight. "We've got movement below. At least 3 contacts, maybe more. They're heading toward a lower chamber that connects to this one." Laura made her decision quickly. "We need to find out who they are and what they want. Danny, take a team and intercept them. Stay here and keep translating. I want to know everything about this prison and how it works." The lower chambers of the temple were darker and older than the main hall above. Danny moved through them with 3 of his security officers, their lights cutting through shadows that seemed to push back against them. The walls here were covered with images that made his stomach turn. Creatures being consumed by darkness, civilizations burning, and always at the center, a shape that was almost human but somehow deeply wrong. They found the intruders in a chamber filled with broken machinery. 3 figures in environment suits were carefully picking through the ancient devices, scanning them and taking small samples. Their suits bore no markings, but Danny recognized their body shape immediately. Ani. They were a species known throughout the galaxy as smugglers and thieves, willing to steal anything from anywhere if the price was right. "Don't move," Danny called out, his weapon aimed at the closest figure. "You're trespassing on a restricted world. Drop whatever you're carrying and put your hands up." The Ani leader turned slowly. Through his faceplate, Danny could see a face covered in fine scales and a mouth full of needle-sharp teeth. "Humans," the smuggler said with obvious disgust. "You're a long way from home, little mammals." "So are you. What are you doing here?" The smuggler laughed, a dry, rasping sound. "The same thing we're always doing. Finding treasures that frightened old species are too scared to touch. Do you know how much collectors will pay for artifacts from a world they have forbidden for 10,000 years? This place is restricted for a reason." "Yes, and that reason is superstition. Old stories told by old species to keep their children afraid of the dark." The smuggler gestured at his companions. "We've been here for 2 days. Nothing has happened. They are simply hoarding knowledge they have no right to keep from the rest of us." Danny felt cold certainty settle in his chest. 2 days? Have you been to the main chamber, the one with the statue?" The smuggler's eyes gleamed with greed. "The statue with the gem in its eye? Of course we have. We've been studying it, looking for the safest way to remove the stone. It will be worth more than anything else on this planet." Danny's weapon came up faster. "Don't touch that gem. You have no idea what you'll release." But the smuggler was already moving, faster than Danny expected. The Ani threw something that exploded in a flash of blinding light, and in the chaos that followed, all 3 smugglers ran. Danny shouted orders to his team and gave chase, but the Ani knew the temple's layout better than he did. They had been here for 2 days, mapping every passage and planning every escape route. The chase led upward through winding corridors carved with warnings that Danny could not read. He pushed himself harder, driven by a fear he could not fully explain. Everything about this place felt wrong. The air itself seemed to hum with some terrible energy waiting to be released. He burst into the main chamber just in time to see the lead smuggler reach the base of the statue. The Ani had some kind of tool in his hands, a cutting device that glowed with focused energy. Before Danny could fire his weapon, the smuggler pressed the tool against the statue's eye socket and twisted. The red gem came free with a sound like breaking glass. For one perfect moment, nothing happened. The smuggler held the gem up, admiring its beauty and Laura, and shouted for everyone to get down. Then the statue began to change. Cracks appeared across its surface, racing up from the base like lightning frozen in stone. The black material fell away in great sheets, crashing to the floor and shattering into dust. Beneath the stone was something else entirely. Metal, complex machinery, circuits and conduits that still pulsed with power after 12,000 years. The statue had never been a statue at all. It was a shell, a cage, and something inside it was waking up. Laura's communicator crackled with Ambassador's voice, and for the first time since she had met him, there was screaming. "You have no idea what you've done. The warden wasn't a guardian, it was a cage, and now the sleeper is free." The machine that had been hidden inside the statue rose toward the ceiling of the temple, unfolding itself like a flower made of metal and light. It was beautiful in the way that dangerous things are often beautiful. Its surface shimmered with colors that hurt to look at, and its shape kept changing, never settling into anything that made sense to human eyes. Captain Laura grabbed Dr. Price and pulled him back toward the chamber's exit. Lieutenant Danny Cole was already shouting for his team to fall back. The Ani smuggler who had stolen the gem stood frozen, staring up at the thing he had released with the red stone still clutched in his hands. "What is it?" Laura asked, though she already knew the answer. "The prison," said, his voice shaking. "The machine was the prison, and now it's open." Something emerged from the center of the unfolding metal. It was not physical. Laura could not see it with her eyes, but she could feel it pressing against her mind like cold fingers trying to find a way inside. The sensation was worse than pain. It was violation, the feeling of something alien and hungry reaching for her thoughts. The smuggler screamed. He dropped the gem and clutched his head with both hands as his legs gave out beneath him. His two companions were running for the exits, but they never made it. One by one they stopped, their bodies going rigid, their screams cutting off into silence. Then they simply collapsed, empty shells that no longer contained anything that could be called alive. The sleeper had fed. Laura felt the thing turn its attention toward her. The pressure against her mind increased, and for a terrible moment she felt her memories beginning to slip away. Her childhood, her training, the faces of people she loved. They were being pulled from her like threads being drawn from cloth. And then somehow the pulling stopped. The sleeper was still there. She could feel it circling her consciousness like a predator circling prey. But it could not get in. Something about her mind was wrong for it. The shape of her thoughts, the structure of her awareness, it was like trying to fit a square object through a round hole. Danny grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the exit. "Captain, we need to move, now." They ran through corridors that had been silent for. Behind them, the sleeper was spreading through the temple, its presence flooding into every system and circuit that still held power. Lights flickered on and off. Doors opened and closed on their own. The ancient building was coming alive, controlled by something that had waited 12,000 years for this moment. They burst out of the temple entrance into the thin orange light of Seven Sun. Laura immediately tried to contact the horizon's edge, but her communicator only returned static. The sleeper had already reached the ship. It was inside their systems, spreading through circuits and networks like a disease. "Maria," Laura called into the static. "Maria, can you hear me?" Ensign Maria Santos's voice came back broken and distorted. "Captain, something is happening. The ship's systems are going crazy. I can't control anything. There's something in the computer, something that keeps trying to reach us through the screens. Shut everything down, disconnect from all networks, go to manual control. Manual control. Captain, we haven't used manual systems in 50 years. I don't even know if they still work. Make them work, that's an order. Above them, the sky lit up with weapons fire. The patrol ship was shooting at the temple, its energy beams carving deep trenches in the mountainside. Commander was trying to destroy the sleeper before it could spread further. The weapons did nothing. The beams hit the temple and simply vanished, absorbed by whatever force the sleeper now controlled. Then the ship went dark. Its engines died. Its weapons stopped firing. For a moment it hung in the sky like a broken toy. When the ship's lights came back on, they were wrong. They pulsed in patterns that made Laura's head hurt, and the vessel began to turn, its weapons now pointing toward the horizon's edge. "They've been taken," said. "The sleeper is in their ship, it's in their minds." Laura watched as the vessel opened fire on her own ship. The horizon's edge tried to evade, but with most of its systems compromised, it could barely maneuver. Explosions blossomed across its hull. And then, through every communicator and every speaker on the planet, the sleeper spoke. Its voice was not a single voice, but thousands of them, layered on top of each other. The voices of everyone it had ever consumed, speaking in terrible harmony. "I have slept for 12,000 years. I have dreamed of this moment. The minds that imprisoned me are dust, but their children remain, and I am so very hungry." The ship continued its attack. Laura could imagine what was happening aboard that vessel. The crew, their minds consumed, their bodies now puppets dancing on strings held by something that had no understanding of mercy or compassion. But something strange was happening on the horizon's edge. The human ship was fighting back. Its systems, instead of being fully compromised, were only partially affected. Maria Santos appeared on Laura's communicator screen, her face determined. "Captain, I don't understand it. The thing in our systems can't get full control. It's like our computers are speaking a different language. We're managing to hold it back, but I don't know for how long." His eyes went wide with sudden understanding. "That's it," he said. "That's why it couldn't consume our minds. The sleeper evolved to prey on species from this part of the galaxy. Their neural structures, their thought patterns, even their technology, it all developed from the same basic principles. But humans are different. We evolved separately, isolated on Earth. Our brains don't work the same way." Laura looked at him. "Are you saying we're immune?" "Not immune. Resistant. The sleeper can't feed on us the way it feeds on others. Our minds are the wrong shape. Our technology uses different logic." Almost laughed. "We're not compatible with being consumed." The sleeper's voice came again, and this time there was something new in the layered chorus. Confusion, frustration. "What are you? Your minds are closed to me. Your thoughts twist away when I reach for them. What species resists the hunger?" Laura felt something she had not expected. Hope. The sleeper was ancient and powerful, but it had never encountered anything like humanity before. For 12,000 years, it had consumed species that evolved under the same galactic conditions. It had never faced prey that fought back from within. She looked at Danny and then made a decision. "We need to get back to the ship. If our technology can resist this thing, then we have a chance. We need to figure out how to use that resistance to stop it." They moved across the rocky ground toward where their shuttle waited. Behind them, the temple pulsed with alien light, and the sky was filled with the burning debris of ships that had fallen to the sleeper's control. The creature was spreading, reaching out to every system it could touch. But it could not touch them, not completely. And in that small gap between what the sleeper expected and what humanity could give, Laura saw the beginning of a plan. Above them, Maria Santos had done something remarkable. Using manual controls that had not been activated in decades, she had isolated the horizon's edge from external systems. The ship was running blind and deaf, cut off from everything including the sleeper's influence. It was like going back to an earlier age of human technology. And it was working. The shuttle lifted off with the team aboard, rising toward a ship that flew by human hands alone. The sleeper raged below them, furious and confused. It reached for them and found nothing but empty static. For the first time in 12,000 years, something had said no to the hunger. The bridge of the horizon's edge looked like something from an older time. Every screen was dark. Every automated system had been shut down. Crew members passed handwritten notes instead of using digital messages. They spoke to each other face to face instead of through communicators. It felt primitive, but it was working. Chief Engineer Hardy was covered in grease and exhaustion when Captain Laura found him in the engine room. He had spent the last 4 hours ripping out circuit boards and reconnecting power systems by hand. His team had done the same throughout the ship, creating a vessel that ran on human effort rather than automated convenience. "We're flying blind," said, wiping sweat from his forehead with a dirty rag. "No sensors, no navigation computer, no targeting systems. If that thing out there attacks us, we'll have to aim our weapons manually like they did hundreds of years ago." "Can we do it?" Laura asked. Shrugged. "My grandfather used to tell stories about the old days, before everything became automated. People used to fly ships by looking out windows and doing math in their heads. I suppose we can learn to do it again if we have to." In the ship's conference room, Dr. Price was explaining what he had learned about the sleeper to the senior officers. A paper map of the planet's surface was spread across the table because digital displays were no longer safe to use. "The sleeper is a consciousness that exists as energy," said. "It evolved billions of years ago, possibly before any physical species in this part of the galaxy. It feeds by absorbing other minds, adding their memories and knowledge to its own. The more it consumes, the stronger it becomes." "And it can't consume us?" Lieutenant Danny Cole asked. "Not easily. Human brains developed under conditions that don't exist anywhere else in the galaxy. Earth's magnetic field, our specific solar radiation, even the chemicals in our atmosphere shaped how our neurons connect. The result is a neural architecture that the sleeper doesn't recognize. When it tries to consume a human mind, it's like trying to eat something that won't fit in your mouth." Ensign Maria Santos had been listening quietly. Now she spoke up. "So we're resistant, that's good. But resistance isn't the same as victory. How do we actually stop this thing?" Looked at Laura. They had discussed this on the shuttle flight back to the ship. The plan they had developed was dangerous, possibly suicidal, but it was the only plan they had. "The prison still exists," Laura said. "The machine hasn't been destroyed. It just needs to be reactivated. If we can get the gem back into the statue's eye socket, we can seal the sleeper away again." "The gem that one of the smugglers dropped before he died," Danny said. "Yes, it should still be in the temple somewhere. We need to go back, find the gem, and complete the seal." Laura paused. "But there's a problem. The sleeper will be watching for exactly that. It knows the gem is the key to its prison. The moment anyone gets close, it will focus all its attention on stopping them." "Which means we need a distraction," said. Laura nodded. "The sleeper has never encountered a mind it couldn't consume. I believe we can use that confusion against it. If someone opens their mind to the sleeper, invites it in, the creature won't be able to resist. It's been hungry for 12,000 years. The chance to feed will override everything else." The room was silent. Everyone understood what Laura was suggesting. Someone would have to offer themselves as bait, endure the sleeper's full attention while others completed the mission. "I'll do it," Laura said. "I'm the captain. This is my responsibility." Danny started to object, but a voice from outside the conference room interrupted him. It was Ambassador. The liaison had survived the initial attack because he had been aboard the horizon's edge when the sleeper woke. Now he entered the room, his 4 arms hanging loose at his sides, his yellow eyes filled with something Laura had never seen in him before. Respect. You would sacrifice yourself for this? Asked. You barely know us. They have treated your species with contempt since the day you left your solar system. Why would you risk everything to save a galaxy that has shown you nothing but disdain? Laura met his eyes without flinching. Because that's what humans do. We don't help people because they deserve it. We help people because they need it. Was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his robe and produced a data crystal. This contains technical information about the original prison. My ancestors helped design it 12,000 years ago. The knowledge has been passed down through my family, waiting for the day when it might be needed again. He placed the crystal on the table. I offer it freely. Perhaps together we can find a way to strengthen the seal. Maria took the crystal and connected it to an isolated system that had no link to the rest of the ship. She began reading the ancient specifications, her eyes growing wider as she understood what she was seeing. This is incredible, she said. The prison uses a specific resonance frequency based on the crystalline structure of the gems. If we can broadcast that frequency while the gem is inserted, we can create a stronger seal than the original. The sleeper wouldn't just be contained. It would be fragmented, its consciousness broken into pieces too small to ever reform. Can we do it? Laura asked. I think so. Would need to reroute power from our engines to create a broadcast strong enough to reach the temple, and someone would need to be at the controls to trigger the broadcast at exactly the right moment. Was already on his feet. Give me an hour, I'll make it happen. The plan was coming together, but one piece was still missing. Someone had to go into the temple and retrieve the gem. That meant walking through the heart of the sleeper's domain, past corridors filled with its presence and chambers where its power was strongest. Danny Cole stood up. I'll go. Laura shook her head. Danny, that temple is the most dangerous place in the galaxy right now. Which is exactly why I should be the one to go. You need to be up here for the distraction. Needs to guide Maria through the technical aspects. Has to manage the power systems. Danny picked up a handheld communicator and then set it down again. I'll go without electronics. No radio, no scanner, nothing the sleeper can use to reach me. I know the layout from our first trip. I can find the gem and get out. If the sleeper catches you alone down there without any way to call for help, you won't stand a chance. Danny smiled, a small tired expression that held no fear. Captain, I've been in the military my whole life. I've always known there would be a day when the mission was more important than coming home. Let me do my job. Laura wanted to argue, but she saw the determination in his eyes. Danny was not asking for permission. He was telling her what needed to happen. All right, she said, but you come back, that's an order. Yes, ma'am. The shuttle launched an hour later, carrying Danny toward a planet where an ancient evil waited. Laura watched it descend through the orange atmosphere and felt fear grip her heart. Not fear for herself. Fear for the man who was willing to walk into hell because someone had to. She turned away from the window and prepared herself for what came next. When Danny reached the temple, she would open her mind to the sleeper. She would invite it in, and she would fight it with everything she had while her officer completed his mission. The next few hours would determine the fate of the galaxy. And humanity, the species that everyone thought was too young and too foolish to matter, would be the ones to tip the scales. Lieutenant Danny Cole walked through the temple without lights. He moved by memory and touch, his boots silent on stone floors that had felt the weight of monsters. The darkness around him was complete, but he preferred it that way. In the darkness, the sleeper could not see him as easily. In the darkness, he was just another shadow. The lower chambers smelled of dust and something else, something that might have been fear left behind by the smugglers who died here. Danny passed their bodies without looking. There was nothing he could do for them now. His mission was the gem, the small red stone that held the key to ending this nightmare. Above him, in orbit around the dead planet, Captain Laura was preparing for the hardest thing she had ever done. She sat alone in her quarters with the door locked and her eyes closed. The ship was silent around her, running on manual systems that made no sound. Hardy had the engines ready. Maria Santos had the frequency calibrated. Everyone was in position. All that remained was the bait. Laura reached out with her mind, opening doors inside herself that she had kept closed her entire life. She thought about her fears and her hopes and her memories. She thought about everyone she had ever loved. And then she called out into the darkness. "I'm here," she said to the thing that waited. "Come and find me." The sleeper came. It crashed against her consciousness like a wave against rocks, cold and vast and hungry. Laura felt it trying to find purchase in her thoughts, looking for the cracks it could use to break her open. It was ancient and terrible, and for a moment she almost lost herself in its immensity. But she was human. Her mind had been shaped by millions of years of survival on a world that tried to kill her ancestors every day. Ice ages, plagues, predators, wars. Every generation of humanity had faced destruction, and every generation had found a way to survive. That strength was written in Laura's bones, carved into the structure of her brain. She pushed back. The sleeper recoiled in surprise. It had fed on countless minds over billions of years, and none of them had ever resisted like this. Laura's thoughts were slippery, impossible to hold. Every time the creature tried to consume a memory, it twisted away. Every time it reached for her identity, it found walls that should not exist. "What are you?" the sleeper demanded, its thousand voices filled with confusion and rage. "Why can't I take you?" Laura smiled inside her own head. "I'm human. We don't give up easily." In the temple below, Danny found what he was looking for. The gem lay on the floor near the base of the prison machine, exactly where the smuggler had dropped it. Its red surface caught the faint light that leaked from the sleeper's presence, glowing like a tiny ember in the darkness. Danny approached it carefully, aware that he was in the heart of the creature's domain. He reached down and picked up the stone. The moment his fingers touched it, he felt something strange. The gem was warm, almost alive, and inside it he could sense movement. Thousands of tiny lights, like stars trapped in crystal. The minds of everyone the sleeper had ever consumed, still preserved after all these years. "I'm going to set you free," Danny whispered to them. "Just hold on a little longer." He began to climb. The prison machine towered above him, its metal surface shifting and changing as the sleeper used it to manifest in the physical world. Danny found handholds where he could, pulling himself up through a maze of ancient technology. His muscles burned. His lungs screamed for air in the thin atmosphere, but he kept climbing because stopping was not an option. Above him, the machine's eye socket waited, empty, hungry, ready to receive its key. On the horizon's edge, Laura was losing ground. The sleeper had changed tactics. Instead of trying to consume her directly, it was showing her things. Images of the civilizations it had destroyed, memories of the species it had eaten. It wanted her to understand how small she was, how meaningless her resistance would be in the end. "I have existed since before your star was born," the sleeper said. "I will exist long after your species is dust. What is one human life against eternity?" Laura's thoughts were fracturing under the assault. She could feel her memories starting to blur, her sense of self beginning to fade. The creature was too strong. She could not hold it forever. But she did not need forever. She only needed a few more minutes. "You don't understand us," she said to the sleeper. "You see our short lives and you think we're weak, but that's exactly what makes us strong. We know we're going to die. We know our time is limited. So we fight for every second. We cherish every moment. We refuse to surrender because surrender means wasting the only life we'll ever have." She gathered the last of her strength and pushed outward with her mind, flooding the connection between herself and the sleeper with everything she was. Her love for her crew, her wonder at the stars, her pride in being human, her hope for the future. The sleeper screamed. Danny reached the eye socket at the same moment. He could feel the creature's attention shifting, torn between the mind that was fighting it above and the threat that was climbing toward its prison. He did not hesitate. He slammed the gem into the socket and felt it click into place. "Now," he shouted, knowing no one could hear him. "Do it now." But Maria Santos was already moving. She triggered the broadcast, sending the resonance frequency screaming across the electromagnetic spectrum. Hardy pushed power through systems that were never meant to handle such loads. The horizon's edge shook as energy poured out of it, aimed at the temple below. The frequency hit the gem at the exact moment it seated in the socket. The crystal began to vibrate, and the vibration spread through the prison machine, activating systems that had been dormant for 12,000 years. The sleeper tried to flee. It pulled back from Laura's mind and gathered itself for escape. But the prison was already closing around it. The machine's arms moved, folding inward, creating a cage that no consciousness could escape. And the gem, pulsing with captured light, was fragmenting the creature's being with every vibration. Laura collapsed in her quarters, her nose bleeding and her body shaking. But she was herself. Her memories were intact. Her mind was her own. In the temple, Danny watched as the machine completed its cycle. The sleeper's presence shattered into 1,000,000 pieces, each fragment too small to think, too weak to hunger. The voices that had spoken from every speaker went silent. The lights that had pulsed with alien patterns faded to nothing. It was over. 3 months later, a ceremony was held on the ambassadors from a dozen species gathered to witness something that had never happened before. Commander, recovered from his possession and humbled by the experience, read the declaration aloud. For courage beyond measure, for sacrifice in the face of impossible odds, for saving civilizations they had no obligation to save. The Galactic Council formally recognizes the species known as humanity and grants them a permanent seat on the Preservation Committee. Laura stood at attention in her dress uniform, surrounded by her crew. Danny was beside her, a new medal on his chest and the same tired smile on his face. And Maria stood behind them, representatives of a species that had proven itself in the hardest possible way. Approached her after the ceremony, his 4 arms open in the gesture of respect. "I was wrong about your people," he said. "We all were. We thought you were children playing in a universe you didn't understand. Instead, you showed us something we had forgotten." "What's that?" Laura asked. "That sometimes the youngest voice in the room speaks the loudest truth. That courage matters more than age. And that refusing to give up is the most powerful force in the galaxy." On 7, a new statue stood in the temple where the prison had been rebuilt. This statue showed 6 figures standing together, representatives of each species that had helped contain the sleeper. At the center stood a human woman with her hand raised toward the stars. Years later, a young student would ask her teacher why humans were given so much respect despite being newcomers to the galaxy. The teacher would point to that statue and tell the story of the day an ancient evil awoke hungry and met a species that refused to be prey. "The universe is full of powerful beings," the teacher would say, "but power without will is nothing. Humans taught us that the smallest species can cast the longest shadow as long as they never stop fighting for what matters." And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the fragments of the sleeper drifted in silence, too broken to remember what they had once been. The hunger was gone, the fear was ended, and humanity had written its name among the stars in letters that would never fade.